Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we count down 10 transfers which sent the fans into meltdown. 10. Carlos Tevez to Manchester City. We begin in Manchester, where one of the greatest incidents of football trolling occurred in 2009. Following his move to Old Trafford 2 years earlier, Carlos Tevez quickly became a favourite of the Man United faithful and formed a legendary combination with Ronaldo and Rooney, which helped the club to 2 Premier League titles and a Champions League. But in his second season, relations between the tenacious Argentinian forward and Sir Alex Ferguson became strained, and the club was initially reluctant to pay the £25.5 million to make his loan move permanent. Although they eventually stumped up the money, Tevez had decided he wanted to move. Red Devils fans were relieved after he opted against a move to Liverpool, but were left red in the face when he instead chose to hop over to local rivals Man City. And to rub salt into the wounds, the club celebrated their new signing by plastering Tevez onto a sky blue billboard accompanied by the words, "Welcome to Manchester." Unsurprisingly, he was booed in his first match back at Old Trafford, and a once strong bond was broken. 9. Robin van Persie to Manchester United. In 2012, Sir Alex Ferguson got up to his own bit of mischief when he nabbed Robin van Persie off rivals Arsenal. The Flying Dutchman had just come off a 30-goal Premier League season, dragging the Gunners to third place almost single-handedly as captain, meaning a departure was potentially fatal for the club, let alone the fact he was joining a direct title rival. When he decided to snub a new contract at the Emirates, he penned a letter to the fans saying that he and Arsene Wenger disagreed on the way Arsenal should move forward, and on arriving in Manchester, made no secret of his happiness at joining a, quote, winning club. Subsequently, he scored 2 winners and an equaliser in United and Arsenal's next 3 league meetings, and having taken some stick from his former fans, celebrated every single one of them. 8. Andreas Muller to Schalke. Over to Germany now, where a transfer between 2 fierce enemies caused outrage in the millennium year. Andreas Muller played for Borussia Dortmund twice in his career, and was part of the all-conquering side that won back-to-back Bundesligas and a Champions League in the mid to late 90s. But in 2000, he made the switch to Ruhr rivals Schalke after his contract ran out. Although many players have moved between the clubs over the years, fans of Die Königsblauen were livid when Muller showed up in Gelsenkirchen. They wrote petitions and even organised boycotts in opposition to the playmaker's arrival at their club, incensed that a man so embedded in the recent success of their arch rivals could be welcomed so easily. But it was soon forgotten. Muller was an instrumental figure as the club achieved successive DFB Pokal victories and came within seconds of securing a first Bundesliga title since 1958. 7. Johan Cruyff to Feyenoord. Johan Cruyff and Ajax are 2 entities that many assume to be joined at the hip. Cruyff grew up, became an era-defining footballer and won multiple trophies in Amsterdam, but in 1983 he did the unthinkable and joined arch rivals Feyenoord. Having just won the double in his second spell at De Meer Stadion, Cruyff was astoundingly told that he was surplus to requirements. To be fair, he was 36, but it was nevertheless strange for the total footballer to then see out his final year as a player in Rotterdam of all places. Like Muller, Cruyff's decision to switch ships angered both sets of fans, and crowd trouble ensued at the first Klassiker of the season. And despite having scored 14 goals in their first 3 games with the maestro in the side, Feyenoord slumped to a record 8-2 defeat against the Lancieri. But the man known as the saviour helped the Stadion club bounce back, and they finished the season champions for the first time in 10 years, 6 points ahead of their Amsterdam enemies and with a KNVB Cup to match. Cruyff soon rejoined Ajax as manager, and it was all forgotten. 6. Sol Campbell to Arsenal. In at 6, we have a move which still leaves a sour taste in the mouths of Spurs fans today. Born just 8 miles from White Hart Lane, Sol Campbell was a servant to the Lily Whites for 12 years, coming up through the club's ranks and eventually captaining the side to victory in the League Cup in 1999. And in 2001, he made his last appearance for the club in a 2-1 defeat to North London rivals Arsenal in the FA Cup semi-final. That summer, his contract ran out, and despite being offered record wages to stay, opted instead to leave and join the Gunners, determined to play for a title-challenging team. This quite obviously did not go down well with Spurs fans, who have labelled the centre-back a Judas ever since, and at points their anger have spilled into very dark territory, with some sections aiming racist and homophobic chants at the player while he was playing for Portsmouth years later. Campbell quite rightly said afterwards, "If this happened on the street, you would be arrested." 5. Luis Figo to Real Madrid. Another player treated appallingly by his former supporters was Luis Figo. His move from Barcelona to Real Madrid in 2000 is famously one of the most controversial to have ever taken place, as when reports of a pre-contract agreement between the Portuguese maestro and Los Blancos were leaked that June, he answered them saying, "I'm not so mad as to do a thing like that." In fact, Figo just had to keep stum, as the transfer depended on Florentino Perez winning the presidential election that month. So when Perez won and Figo finalised the move, it came as a shock to everyone at Barca, who had fallen in love with Figo over the years. But some reactions certainly went a bit too far. One Blaugrana fan group condemned the move as unpardonable in the eyes of God, while incoming president Johan Cruyff, keen to show an affinity with the outraged culés, said, "I can never forgive this. I don't want this to sound like a threat, but someone who does this to me will pay." After this declaration of war, things were only going to go badly. On his return to the Camp Nou for El Clasico that October, Figo was showered with coins, mobile phones, half bricks, and even a pig's head every time he went near the corner flag. 4. Harry Kewell to Galatasaray. When Harry Kewell moved to Galatasaray in 2008, it really struck a nerve with fans of his first club, Leeds. Kewell had moved from his native Australia to join the Peacocks aged just 16, and quickly made the rise from the youth setup to be given his first team debut just a year later, becoming an integral part of a young Leeds team who excited crowds and reached 2 European semi-finals at the turn of the millennium. But when the club faced financial meltdown and relegation in 2004, Kewell jumped ship to Liverpool, leaving fans disappointed but not wholly aggrieved. However, 4 years later when Kewell made the move to Istanbul, it was a completely different story. He had already made the trip there with Leeds in 2000 for the UEFA Cup semi-final, a match which had been marred by Galatasaray ultras stabbing 2 travelling fans dead in Taksim Square before the game. Following the move, Kewell chose to wear the number 19 shirt he originally wore for Leeds, and claimed in an open letter to fans that he hoped the transfer would bring the 2 clubs closer together and help the healing process of the tragedy. Needless to say, many of the Elland Road support did not see it quite the same way. 3. John Robertson to Derby County. This transfer not only left the fans raging, but also the manager. John Robertson became a legend at Nottingham Forest under Brian Clough, setting up the winner in the 1979 European Cup final and scoring it himself in 1980. Robertson was Clough's favourite player and was even compared to Picasso by the Forest manager. So when he left for arch-rivals Derby County in 1983 to join up with Clough's former assistant Peter Taylor, bitterness ensued. Forest supporters were obviously fuming, but Clough took the whole ordeal very personally. He saved his contempt for Taylor, calling him a snake in the grass and saying if his car broke down and I saw him thumbing a lift, I wouldn't pick him up, I would run him over. Little bit harsh there, Brian. 2. Alfie Kahn to Celtic. Now, you may have heard about Mo Johnston's very shady transfer to Rangers in the 1980s, but Alfie Kahn actually set the precedent for crossing the Glasgow divide in the decade previous. Making his professional debut at Ibrox in the late 60s, Kahn was a member of Rangers' European Cup Winners' Cup and Scottish Cup winning sides, before moving down to Tottenham in 1974. 3 years later, rumours circulated of a heroic return to the Gers, but he instead transferred to enemy Celtic, which obviously sparked outrage. Kahn later claimed that he hadn't expected attention from the fans and media to be so intense, but saw the upside too, saying at least it got the city talking. And when former boys player Billy McNeil took over at Celtic in 1978, he left Kahn out of the side for every single Old Firm derby. We wonder why. 1. Roberto Baggio to Juventus. At number 1, we have a player whose transfer to a rival actually sparked a full-on riot. When Roberto Baggio moved from Fiorentina to Juventus in 1990, fans of La Viola were not happy one bit, and it's not hard to see why. The club had helped a young Baggio back from a career-threatening injury when he joined them 5 years earlier, before seeing him blossom into one of Italy's greatest talents. And in his final season at the Artemio Franchi, he helped the club narrowly avoid relegation and reach a UEFA Cup final. There they met Juve, a club particularly hated by the Viola faithful after they controversially pipped them to the title in 1982. And the old lady ran out winners again, and not without some debatable refereeing decisions to get the opposition rolled up. Following the defeat, they learned of Baggio's imminent world record transfer to Juve, and all hell broke loose. Riots broke out all across Florence, and some fans even laid siege to the club's headquarters, leaving 50 people injured.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that. As usual, let us know what you thought in the comments below. And if you liked that, why not check out the video that's on screen right now? Click it, it's a good one. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.